Welcome to the Your Limitless Leadership podcast with Jenny and Brent Widman. Here, we believe leadership isn't just about titles. It's about how you show up in every aspect of life. Whether you're leading a business, building a legacy as an entrepreneur, guiding your family, or striving to lead yourself first, this podcast is for you. Join us as we dive into real conversations about growth, decision-making, and the courage it takes to lead with purpose. Get ready to be inspired, challenged, and equipped to become the limitless leader you are meant to be. This is Your Limitless Leadership podcast. Let's lead without limits. All right, welcome to Your Limitless Leadership podcast, and I have to say this. I'm uber excited about. I've just gotten to know this girl over the last 30 days, Miss Ashley, and she works currently for the NFL. And she is, what struck me with her is one of the kindest hearted, one of the most driven, one of the just simply the nicest, one of the nicest people I think I've ever met in my life. And I asked her to be on here because I selfishly, I'll say that, I just want to get to know her better and her story and who she is, because when she was talking about it, when I first heard it, just the impact she's already had on people and what she has to give to the world, it's pretty cool to hear that. And that's why I don't know how else to say that, but thank you so much for being on here. I have a feeling I won't ruin everything and screw it all up, but I would love to know just your background, kind of the state of the Ashley. How'd you get to where you are, where you came from, the things that you've done, just an overview of who you are, I guess.
Yeah, well, first off, thank you so much for having me, Brent. I'm really excited and appreciate the opportunity to get to know you better as well. And so, as you mentioned, my name is Ashley Smith. I'm from Jackson, Tennessee. And as someone from Tennessee, I grew up loving the Lady Vols. And so had an opportunity in college to attend the University of Tennessee. And from my freshman year to my senior year, I was a student manager for the Lady Vols basketball program. So I worked with Pat Summitt her last 3 years as the head coach of the program. And then when she retired, Holly Warlick, who took over for her, named me the head women's basketball student manager. So I had an opportunity to work with the team on everything from travel logistics and practice to anytime that we had special guests in town, making sure that they had a great experience, giving them tours of campus as well as tours of the facility. And then also, just kind of making sure that when we hit the road that all the gear was in place. Coach Summitt was very superstitious. So she had this orange stool that she would always sit on. So it was, responsible for making sure that all the managers, we packed that and had the team ready to go. And then when I graduated from Tennessee, I went on to the NCAA where I served as a postgraduate intern in their internship program. And so my job was to help plan national championships in different sports. So my first year had an opportunity to work 13 national championships across, divisions 1, 2, and 3. And then they extended my internship 3 times until I became full-time. So, was able to start off as an assistant coordinator in the championships and alliances department and worked on D2 track and field, as well as cross country. And then after 3 years at the NCAA, I returned to Tennessee and started out as the executive assistant for the head football coach. So the football coach at the time was Butch Jones. So, handled everything concerning him. Then the next year was promoted to the director of football administration. So still handled all matters regarding coach, but worked with our Tennessee fund. So that's like the donor group or the donor team to make sure that, if we had special events for donors, that everything, was handled in the right way as it relates to engaging with the football program. And then we had a coaching change. So I left football, went to student athlete development. So my job was to work with all UT student athletes as related to their professional development, leadership development, community outreach, as well as personal development, and did that for about 2 years. Then went back to football was an assistant AD for player relations. And so handled all things regarding the holistic development of Tennessee football players. And then we ran into another coaching change. So I took a leap of faith and left with no job and went on this hunt of, trying to land my next opportunity. So I was interviewing with other universities, with professional sport teams. So like teams like the Spurs and, the Cleveland Cavaliers. And then also was, interviewing for a job at the NFL league office. And in between that time, I just kind of was getting all these interviews, but nothing was sticking. And so was just praying, was like, God, give me some direction. And, I felt the Lord tell me to reach out to teams of interest and kind of take a really targeted approach. So I reached out to the Titans, the Chiefs, and the Bucks. The Chiefs got back to me and said, we're embarrassed to, kind of offer this with your experience, but we would love to have you intern for a training camp internship. So they had the Norma Hunt player personnel training camp internship, which was named after Norma Hunt, who was Lamar Hunt's wife. And they were the owners and founders of the team. And so interviewed, landed that internship, worked training camp, and with 2 weeks left in the training camp, was offered my current role. So I'm a manager of player engagement at the NFL league office. And my job is to work with NFL current players and former players on their personal and professional development. So that is a long-winded
Love it.
look into my career journey and what has led me to where I am today.
You opened up some stuff there for sure. I gotta go back to Tennessee.
Yeah.
Why Tennessee? And then you don't have to answer this one yet, but I would love to know just the people that you were around, the Pat Summits and people like that, even the athletes, because I have to think, I don't know the time frame you were there, but there were some pretty high caliber women athletes there at the time. I don't know, was that a Candace Parker or was that after Candace?
So it was right after. So I started in '09, so the year after Candace.
And that was like just the people you surrounded yourself with. I would love to know what you, and I know this is a big question because you were there for a while, but what you took away from there at such a, because it was a younger age, let's call it what it is, and
Right.
very influenced and what have you. Like what stuck out to you that you brought with you or that you learned or good, bad, both
Yeah.
sides of it?
Sure. So first we'll start off with why Tennessee. So, from Tennessee, and I played basketball from second grade to 12th grade, and I absolutely loved the Lady Vols. Anytime they're on TV, you would watch them. My brother, his kindergarten teacher was actually Pat Summitt's roommate in college and sorority sister.
Really?
Yeah, so that's like a really cool connection. And
Ah,
then yeah, and then I think the other piece too is that it was my senior year of high school, and I was being recognized as one of the top students in the area. And it just so happened that, they had me stand up and they read my bio and they said, Ashley is debating going to school at either the University of Tennessee or the University of Alabama. And so the guest speaker, yeah, I know, talk about like two.
those are
Um,
drastically different places right there.
For
I love
sure. And so the guest speaker was Joan Cronin, who at the
it.
time, Tennessee had split athletic departments. And so Miss Jones said, she just, she was like, there's something about your smile. And because, I'm very much a shoot your shot kind of person. So once she finished her keynote and they, adjourned the event, I went up to her and introduced myself, and she was like, "You just have a beautiful smile, and just want to find out from you, like, what would it take to get you to come to the University of Tennessee?" And I said, "If there's an opportunity to work with Pat Summitt, it's a done deal." And she said, "Well, I think we can make that happen." And so she put me in touch with Kathy Harston, who at the time was the director of basketball operations. And so Kathy gave me all the information. And what I had to do is that I had to come to campus the summer before my freshman year and work basketball camps. And that was my way of trying out to become a
Mm,
student manager. And so through that process, they wanted to see, was I punctual? Was I a hard worker? Was I someone who had a level of professionalism, or was I going to fangirl and whatnot over the players? And so, past that test from working the camps and, doing my job and doing it incredibly well. And so that's what led to me choosing to go to the University of Tennessee. And when I think about, being really honest, Brent, I have moments where, maybe I'm walking around New York headed to work or whatnot, and almost have to just pinch myself to think that I had an opportunity to work with a legend, such as Pat Summitt. And so, I always try to think about, as I think of, where my career is going and different, goals and aspirations that I have for myself, I always try to think about what was it that truly made Coach Summit special. Obviously, the accomplishments on the court, and when you look at her coaching tree and you see the success of all the women that either worked with her in a student manager capacity or were a coach under her leadership or even, played for her. I think the thing that sticks out to me the most is who she was and how she treated people when the cameras were gone behind closed doors. She was someone who just was so kind and caring. And yes, she demanded and expected excellence from her people. So, regardless of your role within her organization, she demanded the best from you. But I'll never forget, there was one day, something that we would often do as a group of managers is that we would sit in this conference room. So it was a long conference room, and there was like a long conference table in the room. And so we would literally take, items that needed to be signed. So everything from like Wheaties boxes to jerseys to basketballs. And we would essentially have an assembly line, and we would sit
Mm.
all around the conference table, and we would pass her these items as she signed. And I'll never forget, one day we're in the conference room and I asked her, I just said, Coach, like, at the time she was the winningest coach in America. And, Thompson Bowling Arena, the arena in which the Lady Vols as well as the men's basketball team that they play in, it's to this day, it is called the Summit, and it's named after her. And I said, did you ever think that you would have this level of success? And, what is your advice for those of us who want to go on and follow in your footsteps, working in sports? And she said, my advice to you is this. And if you learn one thing from me, I want it to be this: always treat people with respect. So whether you are dealing with, you know, the janitor of a company, which oftentimes we did, deal with the janitors, with managers, you're getting in the arena late at night to meet the team if you didn't travel or whatnot. Or if you are dealing with the CEO of T-Mobile, who the CEO of T-Mobile at the time was really close friends with her. So she would come with us on trips and whatnot. She said, I want you to always treat people with respect. And so I just learned so much. And, no program is perfect by any means. But when I think about the good and the bad, I mean, I can't really think, I don't necessarily have any bad moments or memories with that team. I think my time with Coach Summit and with the team really impacted me. I've had a chance to work with some of the best athletes in the world. And I think that learning that level of professionalism and that, not to be a fangirl, but just to know that who I am is more than enough, and that whoever likes me, great, and who doesn't, that's okay too. Like, I'm there to serve. But those women have had a profound impact on my life even to this day. I want to tell you a quick story. So something that I do is that I'm a worship leader at a church here in New York. And so I'll never forget Vicky Ball, who I actually had a conversation with her last week. We were just, catching up and kind of talking about life and whatnot. And Vicky would often make music. She would create beats and whatnot. And she rapped and was like really good. And one time I was like, yo, Vic, put me on the track. And she's like, what? And I'm like, I can sing, put me on the track. And she's like, girl, goodbye. You cannot sing.
Oh, love it.
And so we're literally in practice one day, and she's shooting free throws and I'm rebounding for her. And so she shoots, it swishes, I catch the ball, and I'm like, I'm serious, I can sing. And she's like, okay, well, you have the ball's in your court, prove it. And I'm like, right now? And she's like, yeah, prove it. So Vicky runs out of the gym and she goes into the locker room in one direction. I run out in the opposite, and we're in the locker room. I'm like, turn around. And so she turns around and I sing for her. And she's like, oh my gosh, like, you really can sing. And I was like, yeah, I told you. And so then we like run back out. We finish the rest of the practice, and I'm, doing laundry and getting things ready to go. And she makes me come into, the area where the girls are changing and whatnot. And she's like, you're going to stand right here in the middle of this locker room and you're going to sing for us. And I'm like, what? Like, this was more than what I bargained for. I told you I would sing for you. I did that. That's enough. And she was like, Vicky's like 6'4", and she's like, no, you're gonna sing. And when Vicky Ball tells you to sing, you sing. And so I sang for the team, and they were just like, oh my gosh, you have such a gift. And so that led to, they asked me to sing for their senior night. So I sang the national anthem for their senior night, which led to me singing at more Lady Ball basketball games. I did like a men's basketball game, a volleyball game, and then also did the SEC women's basketball championship game. And so that led to me really just tapping into and realizing, like, Ashley, God's given you a gift to sing and you know this. And while you're aware, you've sat on it. But like, God gives us gifts and he blesses us to be a blessing to others. And so even to this day, I was telling her that me being a worship leader, I'm often reminded of her just really pushing and encouraging me to not sit on my gift, but to use it to pour out and bless other people.
I don't know if you hear yourself or understand what you're saying right now. I hope you do. Just listening to you, and when I think about people and leadership and just the people that you have surrounded yourself with, not because you saw that and that's why you did it. It goes back to you saying, just shoot your shot.
Yeah.
But here's a question. When you were, I think you were in high school, and
Right.
you said, if I get the opportunity to work with Pat Summitt,
Yeah.
is that when that was?
Yeah, and I would say this, I'm really fortunate with it was in high school, that's correct. And I'm really fortunate that with my parents, from a young age, they really instilled in me the concept of dreaming and dreaming big,
Okay.
especially my mother. So when I was a young girl, I remember I would get in bed with my mom and I would talk about all my goals and my dreams. And she would always say, Ashley, as long as you trust God, you believe that all things are possible with God and you work hard, anything is possible. And so, like, one of my dreams was that, I went to a predominantly white school from second grade to 12th grade. So, oftentimes, I went to the University School of Jackson. It was a private school. And so, oftentimes, the women that were being named Miss USJ were blonde hair, blue eyes, or, they would have, they'd be brunettes with brown eyes. And so, I remember telling my mom, like, I want to be Miss USJ, right? Like, I want to somehow have, kids who come after me see that you can be Black in a predominantly white environment and still be valued, still, make an impact. And, I was really fortunate that my senior year of high school, I was named Miss USJ. And I think that even that accomplishment to this day, I'm the only Black woman that's ever been named Miss USJ at, my high school. So I think there were little moments, or I like to call them God winks, where, luckily with the foundation of faith that my mother instilled within me, but then, adding his super to my natural. I think those were little God winks that kind of created these muscles in me to keep dreaming and keep pushing, and has ultimately led me to where I am today.
There's a pattern here that you continuously, and I'm a believer that you have whatever it is, if it's you have kids or family or people you surround yourself with, people, I don't care if you're a student manager, I don't care what you're doing, you're still a leader. And it just depends on if you choose to do it or not. And you can see a pattern with what you're doing that you just simply decide, like your mom teaching you that. She's
Yeah.
teaching you to decide to do something. And we have two paths, like you're
Yeah.
talking about. We can either take the path of, well, I go to a white school and I can't do that because that's not me, or watch me.
Yeah.
And you have proven time and time again that watch me lives really strong in what you do. Like that is, and I hope you see that, because that's hitting me right in the face. It just giving me the motivation to go, why can't you?
Yeah, for sure. And it's so interesting that even you mentioned children. So, as I mentioned, I'm originally from Jackson, Tennessee.
Yeah.
I now live in Brooklyn, New York, and I work in Manhattan. And so when I, received the offer to come and work at the NFL, I was excited because it's like, this is the mecca of sport and entertainment, the NFL. But at the same time, I was terrified. I had visited New York before and I felt like never will I ever live in New York, right? Especially when you think about Brooklyn, Manhattan, just the crazier parts of New York. Whereas, there's upstate that's a little more the suburbs, but like I'm in the heart of just
Mhm.
all the madness, the good, the good and the bad that happens. And so I'll never forget, it was maybe the weekend before I was supposed to move to New York, and my I was sitting at home and my dad was like, "Why did you agree to take this job? Why did you agree to move to New York when you're not excited about it?" He was like, "You're sitting here, your palms are sweaty. I can tell you're very anxious. Like, why did you do this?" And I said, "Dad, my decision to accept the job offer from the NFL and to move to New York is not about emotion, but it's about getting the experience to where one day I want to become a wife and a mother. And I want my children to look at me when I'm telling them, take the leap of faith, do the thing that you're afraid of, take action today instead of waiting for tomorrow. I wanted to, for them to be able to say, you know what? Mom is speaking out of experience. Everything that she's telling us to do, she once did it, and look at the fruit that it has brought about in her life versus I don't ever want to be that parent where it's, hey, do what I say, but not as I do. No, it's like, do as I say, as well as what I did, and trust and believe that God will grant you favor, that God will bless your life the same way that He did mine. And so, yeah, I think I've had to faith it forward. And a lot of that just comes from just, like I said, the foundation that was set for my parents at such a young age.
Well, even what you're talking about there, even saying that to your dad, I yearn for my son to say something like that to me because they see it over time. And then the fact of the vision of what you're creating for your kids already,
Right.
because you're showing that mom's done it, which means you can do it. It just
Exactly.
instills this level of belief in people that goes with I think there's so many people out there that will, like you said, will tell somebody to do something, but they may not be doing it themselves.
Right.
And when you show that you can do it, or then you can speak to it, and there's this level of trust, or this, I don't, you know what I'm saying? There's this
For sure.
level of she knows what she's talking about. She's walked the walk, so she can talk the talk. And if she can do it, why can't I? Is what you're instilling in people, and that's
Exactly.
yeah. Well, it goes back to I wrote down as you were talking, face your fears because you have consistently even taken the internship when you left a job and applied for jobs and took an internship, so a big step backwards. Why? Like, what did you see in that you thought, okay, I'm going to work for the Chiefs?
Right.
I don't want to say how did you make that decision because that sounds really cliche, right? Well, I decided this, but
Sure.
like that's a big decision in your life.
Yeah, it was a huge decision.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I think the kind of the reoccurring theme when I'm talking is that, I have a strong relationship with God. And
yeah,
so there was a lot of prayer, especially when you go from when I was the assistant AD at Tennessee, I was one of two Black women that was running player development for an SEC football program. And I was the youngest person on Tennessee's senior staff. So from the outside looking in, I had made it. I was at the pinnacle, and I'm a Tennessee girl. Like I'm from Tennessee, right? So it's like, everyone in the state
yeah.
was just like,
You're
oh my
cool.
gosh, like
Yep.
you are here, right? But we had a coaching change as well as an AD change, and there was just a lot going on. And so just really spent a lot of time on my knees, just praying to God and just asking, Lord, is my time at Tennessee, is the season up? And I just felt the Lord saying that it was. And so, like I said, took the leap of faith. And, at the time I was applying for full-time opportunities, I was in interviews with other universities with NBA teams as well as with the league office.
Mhm.
And honestly, the reoccurring question that I kept getting from people at the office was that, okay, you have extensive experience in the collegiate space, but you don't have any experience in the NFL. Do you really feel like you're ready? Do you really feel that you could hack it? So for me, I was like, okay, well, the only way that I can get this experience and show people that I can handle being in the NFL is to go and take this internship. And also, too, as I was praying, the Lord reminded me to despise not small beginnings. And he kept like Ruth, the story of Ruth kept coming up. And so I, started reading on Ruth, and Boaz found Ruth when she was working in the field. And so, no, going to work with the Chiefs, I wasn't looking for my husband, but I felt that, okay, that there was a Boaz that would find me. And so in reality, what happened is that I was working, I would be early, I did everything. And the jobs that were being asked of me would be like, hey, can you take Chris Jones from the dorm rooms where we're staying to the practice field on a golf cart? Can you sit in this room all day and, watch film and evaluate talent, things of that nature that not only, taking guys, players on a golf cart, someone may say, okay, that's kind of menial. But for
Mm-mm.
me, I felt like no job was too small. And so if that's what the organization was asking me to do, I was going to do it and I was going to do it well. And even there was a level of having to step outside my comfort zone. I didn't necessarily know football to the capacity in which I learned to scout guys, but I'm a firm believer that you have to go to grow. And so I had to go and step out of my comfort zone to grow these new skills that they were asking me to develop and deliver. And so I think the other piece is that working, doing the best that I could, having a positive attitude, things of that nature. And so one night, Brett Veach, the general manager, just kind of said, Ashley, like, what is the plan here? You need, a salary, benefits, things of that nature. And so we had a great conversation. And during that conversation, I let him know that I was in the final three for a job at the league office. And
Mm.
he was like, wait, what department is that in? And I said, football operations. And he said, who oversees that? And I said, it's Troy Vincent. And he's like, Troy Vincent, you know that Coach Reed coached Troy when Troy played for the Eagles. And I was like, oh, shoot, I didn't even put that, put two and two together. And he was like, okay, well, I'm going to have Coach Reed make a phone call, and I was like, okay, great, thank you. But I didn't think much of it, right? I kind of was like, okay, yeah, he's talking. This is nice and kind, but Coach Reed is busy. Brett's busy trying to put a team together, all these things. And so I'll never forget that when I eventually got to the league office, I learned that Brett made a call, Coach Reed made a call. So many people within that organization made phone calls on my behalf and said, hey, there's something special about this young lady. You all should seriously consider hiring her. And so, again, that goes back to the Ruth mentality that I took, and that I was working the field. I essentially was working literally the field, and at the football field, and like being at practices and whatnot. And even when we travel to preseason games, things of that nature, and doing all that I could to serve that organization. And so I feel like the seeds that I planted, they were on fertile soil to where then when I needed the Chiefs to speak well on my behalf, they did it, but they did it to a level that I wasn't even expecting. And so that's why I often tell professionals all the time when they come to me for advice, it's not about what you know or who you know. It's about who knows you and is willing to speak well of you in rooms that you don't have access to.
But you create that. I'm sitting
For
here
sure.
listening to you. You didn't ask him to make that phone call. By the
Mm-mm.
series of things that you did by showing up, that humble tenacity, if you will, that you continued, nothing was beneath you, nothing was bad, nothing got you off. You sitting in a golf cart having a conversation with Chris Jones was just as important as looking at talent and what's the next evolution for the Kansas City Chiefs,
For
etc.
sure.
So it's and that's the thing, that what you just said about, it's who knows you. You built that name.
Yeah.
Because again, you could build two different names. You could be the fangirl, like you talked about,
Yeah.
or you could be the person that shows up time and time and time and time again. And we all have days we don't feel like it, and I'm sure you've had those, but there's just this level of where does that I wrote this down. I don't want to ask what drives you, but where does that level of because it doesn't sound to me like you're always looking for the next thing. That's not what lives in you. It's I'm going to be as damn good as I can be at the thing I am in the moment, and the rest will kind of take care of itself. Now I got to strive for it and look for it and ask for it.
Right.
Where does that evolve over time, or is there a place that comes from?
Yeah, I think life. Shortly after college, I was like, I want to be this, right? So at one point, it was that I wanted to be an athletic director at a Division I school. Then it kind of changed a little bit, and it's I want to become a big time executive in women's basketball. And I think for me, for sure, I'm really focused on where my feet are planted and doing my job and doing it incredibly well. But I think the other piece is that I've also learned to be open. So even when I was working at the NCAA, I have a younger brother and he plays in the NFL currently. And so when I was at the NCAA, my brother was being recruited by, Tennessee, Alabama, Ohio State, Notre Dame, the list goes on. And when I would go to these different college campuses, I had these coaches ask me all the time. They said, would you ever consider working in college football? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. But in my head, I had never considered that. But
Hmm.
what I had to learn, and the more that the question kept coming up, I was like, you know what? And the more that I was going around in these campuses, I didn't really see a lot of women in roles. Like maybe you saw women who were serving as assistants to the head coaches, or maybe you saw women who were running recruiting, but I definitely didn't see women that were running player development. And so over time, I learned to be open. And so realistically, I even share this with young professionals too. Did I ever think that I'd be working at the NFL at some point in my career? No, quite frankly, the NFL wasn't even on my
Hmm.
radar because I was so focused on women's basketball. And then once my brother started playing, my interest peaked in football, and I was like, okay, one, if I'm going to go and support this young man, I better try and learn like what the heck is even going on. And so I think by being open, right, by being open and saying, yeah, I would work in college football, the door open for me to go and work with the University of Tennessee football program. By me being open to say, you know what, maybe my season at Tennessee is coming to an end. And by me being open to say, you know what, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So let me reach out to these teams that are of interest and see. Let me go work training camp with the Chiefs. Let me go work at the NFL league office. Like, I think what I've had to learn is like, do your job, do it well, develop relationships, and make a good name for yourself. And then when opportunities come across the table, really research them and see, does this push me outside my comfort zone, right? So there's an opportunity to display some courage. Also, does this challenge me to develop some additional skills that maybe I didn't have? And does this position me to take the next level in my career and in my life? And if the answers to all those questions are yes, then I'm like, okay, let's do it.
I think that's the difference. Go back to the dad conversation. It didn't sound to me like you didn't want to go. It sounded more like my palms are sweaty. I'm nervous. I don't know what to expect. I don't know what to do. I just said yes to something, and this is a big yes. And that's kind of what you just talked about is the next challenge, the next thing where so many people shy away from it instead of just taking it head on
For
and
sure.
watch what happens in your life. You can have the life that you want instead of just kind of hovering, if you will, because you say yes.
Yeah, I agree. And so I have this quote that I live by. It's by Emma Bombeck, and it says, when I stand before God at the end of my life, I would hope that I would not have a single bit of talent left and could say, I
Wow.
used everything you gave me. So that is why, for me, it's a matter of I'm always thinking about reality is our time here on earth is temporary. And at some point, I'm going to stand before God. And I believe that the Lord will probably play roll back, the movie of my life. And I want it to be that, okay, God, you gave me talent and sport and being a sport executive, and I did it to the best of my ability. You've given me talent as a singer, and so I'm going to use the gift of singing to glorify you. So I'm going to be the best worship leader that I can be. I'm getting into speaking. I'm like, okay, God, you've given me this gift to be an orator. Like, I'm going to be the best speaker that I can be. Like, my goal is to just pour out and empty out myself in such a way to where literally when I'm standing before God, it's like, I have nothing to give, Lord. Like, I gave everything, every gift, every talent you gave me, and I then used it to bring glory to you and to help other people. And so I want him to say, well done, my good and faithful servant. So that means I can't sit and hide like I once did with the singing and keep that all to myself. It's like, no, I'm trying to pour that out.
I go back to, as you're talking about that, when we first met and you said, I would love to be the next Oprah or something of that nature.
Yeah, that's always been the dream to be the Oprah of my generation.
And my mind goes to, you're the first Ashley.
I love that.
That's what I hear from you, is that's exactly who you, because you are, I don't know, you're the epitome. When I view little girls that want to achieve, like I look at my daughter, she's 10, and the things that she can achieve, if she just followed in your footsteps and your mentality and the humble tenacity and the way you do things and the way you say yes and the way you look for it and the leadership that just lives in you, even though you've fought against things that have come at you and hard times, let's call it what it is, and things didn't always go your way, which
Right.
also built you 100%. I would, and ooh, this one's bringing me to tears, kind of. If my daughter grew up to be like Ashley, I would be, yeah, I would be a proud parent, put it that way.
Thank you. And that means so much. And I think also what drives me too is that at 24, I lost my mother unexpectedly.
Wow.
And that was my best friend. That was my rock, my confidant. I like to call her my dream incubator.
Yeah.
She was my person where, like I said earlier, I would share all my goals and dreams with, and she would always encourage me and push me to be like, okay, well, what are the steps you can take to make that happen? In addition to trusting God, because the Bible says faith without works is dead. And so I think a big piece of what drives me is that I'm so grateful. I went through a period where I was so just angry and frustrated with
Mm.
God and hurt and confused, feeling that why at 24 am I navigating life without my mother? Why at 51 did my mother pass away? But what the Lord reminded me is that I had an incredible mother, but she also lost her mother at a young age. I was 6 when my grandmother passed away. But my mom still was an incredible wife, was an incredible mother, created, her and my father joined together to create an incredible life for my brother and I, and just to expose us to things that, our cousins or different family members didn't have access to. And so essentially my mother was the blueprint, or she laid out the blueprint and was the model that I'm following. And so to your point, as you speak about your daughter, as I mentioned earlier, at some point I want to have children. And so what I'm trying to do is lay the foundation, is to be the model, to develop the blueprint, so that when the little Ashley and, my son comes along too, that they can follow in my footsteps and live a life of legacy that goes well beyond the one that I'll be able to leave. And so I think you hit the nail on the head. That's exactly what it's about for me, is that if I can encourage your daughter, or, little girls out there, or young women out there, or even women my age, to
Yeah.
just be bold and be courageous and dream and go after making those dreams your reality, then I will feel like, okay, I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, because I had a mother who did the same for me. And so even when I look at my life, I honestly feel that I'm living out the prayers of my mother. Like I truly believe that before my mother went on to be with the Lord, that like she prayed to God and was like, Lord, cover my children and, protect them and allow them to be the people that you've called them to be. And so that's just where I am. Is just trying to be the best person that I can be and live a life of legacy that others would want to follow.
I love that you're showing it by example. Again, you don't just talk about it, you do it. And that gives, when I see that, that gives confidence to people around you, little girls that look up to you and what have you, that they get to follow the blueprint your mom created, that now you're creating, maybe not the exact same one, but now they can create their own because you're showing them exactly what is possible and you're already doing it, which is, thank you. Like that's pretty cool. I hope you see that. I really do.
I
Is
do. I
it's
do. And I'm human, so I have my days where I may feel discouraged or my days where I'm like, what am I doing with my life? Just kind of going through all that. But, then I just take a moment and just recenter. So
yeah, yeah, recenter and look at where you actually are from where
yeah,
you came from.
exactly.
And it's perspective is really what it comes down to. So
I agree.
thank you again so much for being on here. This was for people that listen to this, I hope you see how phenomenal she is and the fact that she is always open to just telling the story too at the same time. I mean, I feel like we talk about just scratching the surface, but you're creating some pretty big waves around you too at the same time. So yeah, thank
Thanks,
you.
Brent. That means
Yeah,
a lot coming from you and
I
really
love.
appreciate you having me on today.
Thank you. I truly appreciate it. All right. Thanks, Ash. Thanks for joining us on the Your Limitless Leadership podcast with Jenny and Brent Widman. We hope today's conversation inspired you to think differently about leadership, not just in your career, but in every part of your life. Remember, leadership starts with leading yourself first. It's about taking action, making bold decisions, and showing up with purpose. Now, it's time to take what you've heard today and put it into practice. Whether it's in your business, your community, your family, or your own personal growth, start leading without limits. You have the power to become the leader you're meant to be. Until next time, keep pushing your boundaries and leading with purpose.